Mariko Sanaya was lost in watching the clouds. Not watching them exactly, observing their subtle behaviors with instruments so sensitive they could detect a whisper from kilometers away. She adjusted the calibration on her handheld atmospheric analyzer. One more time. The numbers still didn't make sense. She tapped her comms unit. "Control, this is Maintenance Tech Sanaya. I'm getting some strange density readings on level 14, quadrant 7. The numbers are inconsistent with yesterday's logs." Static crackled before a bored voice replied. "Copy that, Maintenance. Probably another sensor malfunction. Flag it for replacement and move on to your next checkpoint." Mariko frowned. The analyzer was brand new, and this was the third malfunction she'd found this week, all in the same sector, all showing the same impossibility. Cloud formations repeating exact density patterns from days ago, down to the molecular level. "Copy that," she replied automatically, but made no move to leave. Instead, she leaned against the railing of the narrow maintenance walkway that circled the exterior of Aphrodite Station. The massive, floating research platform hung suspended in the upper atmosphere of Venus, riding the winds at precisely 52, 5 kilometers above the planet's surface. Here, by some miracle of planetary science, conditions were almost Earth-like, if you ignored the sulfuric acid clouds and crushing atmospheric pressure just a few kilometers below. Mariko stared out at the swirling, caramel-colored clouds beneath the station. Venus was supposed to be dead. That's what they'd been taught. A runaway greenhouse effect had turned it into a hellscape billions of years ago. That's why they were here, part of humanity's grand terraforming initiative. 15 massive atmospheric processes ringed the planet, slowly converting carbon dioxide into oxygen, one molecule at a time. But something about these readings bothered her deeply. Cloud formations didn't just repeat themselves with perfect precision. Not naturally. She pocketed her analyzer and headed toward the central hub. There was someone she needed to talk to. Dr. Elliot Chen looked up from his desk with obvious irritation when Mariko entered his office. "Maintenance has a scheduling system for a reason, Ms. Sanaya." "This isn't about maintenance, Doctor. It's about these atmospheric readings." She placed her analyzer on his desk and pulled up the comparative data. "I've been tracking anomalous patterns in cloud formation for the past week. The same exact molecular configurations, reappearing in sequence down to the parts per billion." Chen barely glanced at the data. "Cloud patterns repeat. It's basic atmospheric science. Not like this, they don't." Mariko swiped through several screens. "Look at the timestamp. This is the exact same cloud formation, down to the molecular level, appearing at 3-day intervals. It's like time is looping in that sector." Chen leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Ms. Sanaya, you're a maintenance technician, not an atmospheric scientist. These processes are transforming the entire Venusian ecosystem. Anomalies are to be expected. With all due respect, Doctor, this isn't an anomaly. It's a pattern, and it's spreading." Something flickered across Chen's face, an emotion Mariko couldn't quite place. Concern? Fear? It vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "I appreciate your diligence," he said coolly, "but the terraforming project is proceeding exactly as planned. Venus is responding to our interventions precisely as our models predicted." Mariko felt a chill despite the climate-controlled atmosphere. What if Venus isn't as dead as we thought? Chen's eyes narrowed. The surface temperature is hot enough to melt lead. The atmospheric pressure would crush a human in seconds. There is no life here. "Not life as we understand it, maybe," Mariko persisted, "but something reactive. That will be all, Miss Sanaya." Chen's tone made it clear the discussion was over. "I suggest you focus on your assigned duties." Mariko collected her analyzer and headed for the door. As she reached for the panel, Chen spoke again. "I would caution against sharing these theories with the rest of the crew. Morale is important on long-term missions like this one." It wasn't quite a threat, but the implication was clear enough. Mariko nodded stiffly and left. 2 days later, Mariko was back on the exterior walkway, this time with an unauthorized piece of equipment. The quantum chronometer was small enough to fit in her palm, borrowed from the physics lab during third shift, when the night watchman was typically dozing. It wasn't theft, she told herself, just unauthorized borrowing. She calibrated the device and pointed it toward the same cloud formation she'd been monitoring. The chronometer was designed to measure quantum fluctuations at nanosecond intervals, far more precise than her analyzer. If there was something strange happening with time in this sector, the chronometer would detect it. The device hummed softly as it collected data. Mariko glanced nervously over her shoulder, but this section of the maintenance walkway was rarely used. Most of the station's 200 personnel preferred the comfort of the interior observation decks with their reinforced transparent panels. Out here, only a thin railing and her safety harness stood between her and a 52-kilometer plunge into Venus's deadly lower atmosphere. The chronometer beeped, indicating it had completed its scan. Mariko's eyes widened as she read the results. According to the device, the cloud formation she was observing existed in multiple temporal states simultaneously. Parts of it were aging normally, while others appeared to be rewinding, repeating the same molecular movements in perfect reverse sequence. "That's impossible," she whispered. "What's impossible?" Mariko nearly dropped the chronometer as she spun around. Kai Novak, one of the junior atmospheric technicians, stood a few meters away, looking at her curiously. "Kai, you startled me." Mariko hurriedly tucked the chronometer into her pocket. "Sorry." He moved closer, glancing at her analyzer. "Finding more anomalies?" Mariko hesitated. Chen's warning echoed in her mind, but something about Kai's expression, open, curious, without the dismissive skepticism she'd encountered from Chen, made her decide to trust him. "I think something strange is happening with time in this sector," she said carefully. "Cloud formations repeating themselves with perfect precision, down to the molecular level." Instead of laughing or dismissing her, Kai nodded slowly. "I've noticed something similar with the wind patterns. Microcyclones forming and dissipating in sequences that shouldn't be possible according to our atmospheric models." He lowered his voice. "I brought it to Dr. Chen's attention last week, but he told me it was just a calibration error in our systems. He told me the same thing." Mariko felt a surge of validation. "But I've checked and rechecked my equipment. These aren't errors." "So what do you think is causing it?" Mariko took a deep breath. I think Venus might be responding to us, to what we're doing to it." Kai's eyes widened. "You think the planet is alive?" "Not alive in the way we understand life," Mariko clarified, "but maybe aware, reactive. The terraforming processes are making fundamental changes to the planet's atmosphere. What if the planet is trying to maintain equilibrium? By manipulating time?" Kai sounded skeptical now. "That's a pretty big leap." "I know how it sounds, but look." She pulled out the chronometer and showed him the readings. "This cloud formation exists in multiple temporal states. Some parts are moving forward normally, others are reversing. It's like time itself is fractured in this area." Kai studied the data, his expression growing more troubled. "If you're right, this could have serious implications for the entire terraforming project." "I know. That's why Chen doesn't want to hear it. Too much riding on this mission's success." Kai handed the chronometer back to her. "So what's your next step?" Mariko glanced out at the swirling clouds. I need more data. Specifically, I need to check if these time anomalies correspond with the activation cycles of the atmospheric processors. I can help with that, Kai offered. I have access to the processor scheduling database. Mariko felt a rush of gratitude. That would be perfect. If we can establish a correlation between processor activity and these temporal anomalies, then we'd have evidence that the planet is responding directly to our interventions. Kai finished for her. I'll pull the data and meet you tomorrow. Where? Storage Bay 7, East Quadrant. It's usually empty during first shift. Kai nodded. Be careful, Mariko. If Chen's already trying to suppress this information, I know, she replied grimly. But I can't just ignore this. If Venus is reacting to what we're doing, we need to understand how and why, before something goes wrong. Meanwhile, across the station, Dr. Elliot Chen sat in the dimly lit central control room, watching a series of monitors. Each screen displayed data feeds from the 15 atmospheric processors encircling Venus. The processors were massive structures, each the size of a small city, slowly converting Venus's toxic atmosphere into something more Earth-like. Processor 9, positioned directly below Aphrodite Station, was showing anomalous readings. Chen frowned, tapping commands into his console. According to the sensors, Processor 9 had experienced a 0.103% efficiency increase over the past week, a tiny amount, but significant given the precise calculations that had gone into the terraforming project. Sir? One of the overnight technicians approached hesitantly. We're seeing some unusual patterns in the atmospheric data from Sector 7G. Chen minimized his screens. What kind of patterns? It's difficult to describe, sir. It's like the atmospheric molecules are remembering their previous states, reverting back to configurations from days ago. Have you recalibrated the sensors? 3 times, sir. The readings are consistent. Chen nodded slowly. I'll look into it. In the meantime, restrict access to those data points. Routine maintenance on the sensor network. Understand? The technician looked uncomfortable but nodded. Yes, sir. After the technician left, Chen reopened his screens and stared at the data flowing across them. What he couldn't tell anyone, what no one but the project's inner circle knew, was that these anomalies had been predicted. Not the specific form they would take, but the fact that Venus would begin to react in unexpected ways to the terraforming process. The planet wasn't just a dead rock. It was something else, entirely. And they were waking it up. The following morning, Mariko arrived at Storage Bay 15 minutes early, her mind racing with possibilities. She'd spent half the night reviewing data from her atmospheric analyzer, looking for patterns she might have missed. The temporal anomalies were spreading, affecting a growing section of Venus's upper atmosphere around Processor 9. The storage bay door hissed open, and Kai slipped inside, clutching a datapad. His face was pale. You're not going to believe what I found, he said without preamble. I cross-referenced the temporal anomalies with the processor activation schedules, like we discussed. There's a direct correlation, but not what we expected. What do you mean? Mariko asked. The anomalies don't start after processor activations. They precede them by exactly 7 minutes and 22 seconds each time. Mariko felt a chill run down her spine. That's impossible. You're saying the effect comes before the cause? According to this data, yes. Kai handed her the pad. Look for yourself. Mariko studied the information, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The temporal disruptions in the atmosphere began precisely 7 minutes and 22 seconds before each processor activation cycle, as if the planet was reacting to something that hadn't happened yet. This defies everything we know about causality, she murmured. There's more, Kai said. I dug into the processor efficiency reports. Processor 9 has been showing steadily increasing efficiency rates over the past month. Small increases, but statistically significant. Increasing efficiency, that should be good news. Except it shouldn't be possible. The processors were designed to operate at maximum theoretical efficiency from the start. There's no reason for performance to improve unless what? Kai lowered his voice, though they were alone in the storage bay. Unless something is helping it. Optimizing it somehow. Mariko's mind raced with implications. The planet isn't fighting the terraforming process. It's enhancing it. Or learning from it. Kai's expression was a mixture of awe and fear. What if Venus isn't just alive in some way we don't understand? What if it's intelligent? Before Mariko could respond, the storage bay door hissed open again. Doctor, Chen stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 security officers. Mr. Novak, Ms. Sanaya. Chen's voice was cold. You've both accessed restricted data without authorization. Mariko stepped forward. Doctor, you need to see this. The planet is responding to the processors before they activate. It's anticipating our actions. I'm well aware of the temporal anomalies, Ms. Sanaya. Chen's calm response took her by surprise. Did you think we wouldn't notice unauthorized access to our systems? Or the quantum chronometer you borrowed from the physics lab? Then you know I'm right, Mariko pressed. Venus isn't a dead planet. It's reacting to us, learning from us. Chen sighed. Security, please escort Mr. Novak to observation room 3. I need to speak with Ms. Sanaya alone. Wait, Kai protested as the guards moved toward him. We're not wrong about this. The data is clear. The data is incomplete, Mr. Novak, Chen replied, and therefore your conclusions are premature. Please go with security now. As Kai was led away, he gave Mariko a worried glance. She tried to look reassuring, though her own heart was pounding. When they were alone, Chen's posture seemed to soften slightly. Walk with me, Miss Sanaya. Reluctantly, Mariko followed him out of the storage bay and into the corridor. They walked in silence until they reached a small observation lounge overlooking the swirling clouds of Venus. The caramel-colored atmosphere churned beneath them, mysterious and now, to Mariko, somehow threatening. What do you see when you look at Venus, Miss Sanaya? Chen asked, gazing out at the vista. I used to see a dead planet we were bringing back to life, she answered honestly. Now I see something that might have been alive all along, just not in a way we recognized. Chen nodded slowly. A fair assessment. The truth, Ms. Sanaya, is that we've suspected something like this from the beginning of the terraforming project. Mariko stared at him. You knew? Not knew. Suspected. Chen turned to face her. Early probes detected unusual patterns in Venus's atmosphere, patterns that couldn't be explained by conventional physics. It was one of the reasons this planet was chosen for terraforming. You're experimenting on a potentially sentient planet? Mariko felt a surge of anger. We're communicating with it, Chen corrected. The processors aren't just terraforming tools, they're communication devices. Each atmospheric change is a message, a question, and the planet is answering. Mariko struggled to process this revelation. What is it saying? That's what we're trying to understand. The temporal anomalies you discovered are part of its response. Venus doesn't experience time the way we do. For a planetary consciousness, if that's indeed what we're dealing with, time would be flexible. Why keep this secret? Why shut down my investigation? Chen's expression grew serious. Because we don't know what we're dealing with yet. If Venus is indeed sentient in some way, we need to approach this methodically, carefully. Mass panic or uninformed speculation could jeopardize the entire project. And the increasing efficiency of Processor 9? Venus is learning from us, yes. It's adapting to our technology, incorporating our changes into its system. But we don't know if that's cooperation or something else. Mariko considered this. You think it might be dangerous? I think any entity capable of manipulating time and matter at a planetary scale deserves our caution, Chen replied. That's why I need your help, Ms. Sanaya. Mariko blinked in surprise. My help? You noticed these patterns when no one else did. You made connections our scientists missed. Your perspective as a maintenance technician, someone who observes the station's systems holistically, gives you a unique viewpoint. What exactly are you asking me to do? Chen turned back to the view of Venus. Join our research team officially. Help us understand what Venus is trying to tell us, but do it within the proper channels, with the right precautions. Mariko hesitated. This was everything she wanted. Recognition, a chance to pursue her theories, but something felt wrong. And Kai? Mr. Novak will be offered the same opportunity. His insights could be valuable as well. You threatened me before, told me to drop my investigation. I advised caution, Chen corrected, until I could verify your findings independently, which I have now done. Mariko wasn't entirely convinced, but the opportunity to continue her research officially was too tempting to refuse. All right, I'm in. When do we start? Immediately. There's something I need to show you. Chen gestured toward the door. Something few people on this station have seen. 3 hours later, Mariko stood in a restricted section of Aphrodite Station she hadn't known existed. The chamber was circular, its walls lined with complex equipment she didn't recognize. In the center was a holographic display showing Venus in real time, with swirling patterns of light highlighting various atmospheric phenomena. Kai was already there, looking both excited and nervous. They exchanged glances, but remained silent as Chen led them to the central console. This is the resonance chamber, Chen explained. It's designed to detect and visualize patterns in Venus's atmospheric behavior that might indicate communication. Communication? Kai echoed. You think Venus is trying to talk to us? In a manner of speaking, Chen activated the main display. Watch. The holographic image of Venus zoomed in to show the area around Processor 9. The cloud formations Mariko had been studying appeared, their movements now rendered in beautiful detail. As they watched, patterns emerged, rhythmic movements, repeating sequences, waves of molecular activity spreading outward from the processor like ripples in a pond. It's responding to the processor, Mariko breathed. But it's more than just reaction. There's intention. Exactly. Chen manipulated the controls, and the display shifted to show a time-lapse of the past month. We've been documenting these patterns since the project began. They've been getting more complex, more structured. Like a language evolving, Kai suggested. Perhaps. Chen pointed to a particular sequence. This pattern began appearing 3 weeks ago. It repeats with perfect precision every 42 hours, regardless of processor activity. Mariko studied the pattern. It was beautiful, a spiral of molecular movement that expanded and contracted in a complex rhythm. Have you tried responding? Changing the processor cycles to acknowledge the pattern? Yes, Chen said. That's where things get interesting. When we adjusted Processor 9 to emit a similar spiral pattern in its atmospheric conversions, Venus reacted. How? Kai asked. In answer, Chen brought up another display. This one showed readings from the planetary surface, temperatures, pressures, chemical compositions. The surface temperature in the region directly below Processor 9 dropped by 7 degrees Celsius. A tiny change for a planet, but statistically impossible given the time frame. Mariko's mind raced with implications. It's helping us. It wants to be terraformed. That's one interpretation, Chen agreed. Another is that it's simply responding to stimulus, like a plant turning toward light. We don't know if there's conscious intention behind these changes. But you suspect there is, Mariko said, studying Chen's face. Otherwise, why all this? She gestured around the resonance chamber. Chen was quiet for a moment. Let me show you something else. He brought up a new display, this one showing a complex waveform. This is a pattern we detected emanating from Venus's core 3 days ago. It doesn't match any natural phenomenon we're aware of. Kai leaned closer to the display. It's too regular, too structured. Exactly, and it contains this. Chen zoomed in on a section of the waveform, a perfectly repeating sequence of prime numbers from 2 to 89. Mariko felt a chill run through her. That's not natural. That's deliberate communication. Yes, Chen agreed. Which brings us to the real question. What is Venus trying to tell us? And perhaps more importantly, what has it been doing all these billions of years alone in our solar system? Before either Mariko or Kai could respond, an alarm blared through the chamber. Red warning lights flashed along the walls. What's happening? Mariko asked, her heart racing. Chen rushed to the main console. Processor 9 is experiencing power fluctuations, massive ones. His fingers flew over the controls. This doesn't make sense. The power signature is inverting somehow. Inverting! Kai moved to another console. That's impossible. Unless what? Mariko demanded. Unless the temporal anomalies are affecting the processor itself, Kai realized. If time is behaving abnormally in that sector, it could disrupt the processor's operation on a fundamental level. The main display switched to a live feed from Processor 9. The massive structure was surrounded by swirling clouds that seemed to glow with an internal light. Energy discharges raced across its surface like lightning. We need to shut it down, Chen decided, entering commands rapidly, before the disruption spreads to the other processors. Wait, Mariko said, studying the display. Look at the pattern of the energy discharges. The lightning-like energy wasn't random. It traced specific paths across the processor's surface, forming geometric patterns that shifted and evolved with mathematical precision. It's the same sequence as the core emanations, Kai realized. The same mathematics. It's not attacking the processor, Mariko said slowly. It's upgrading it, using our own technology to enhance the communication channel. Chen's hands hesitated over the shutdown controls. If you're wrong, look at the efficiency readings, Mariko pointed to another display. They're increasing exponentially. The processor is operating at 127% of design capacity now, but it's stable. There's no sign of damage or malfunction. Chen studied the readings, conflict evident on his face. This goes beyond our protocols, beyond anything we prepared for. Maybe that's the point, Kai suggested. Maybe Venus is trying to accelerate the process, to show us something. The alarm suddenly ceased, though the warning lights continued to flash. The energy discharges around Processor 9 stabilized into a steady, pulsing glow. The processor has reached a new equilibrium, Chen noted, his voice filled with wonder. Power levels are stabilizing at 150% of design capacity. That should be impossible. What now? Mariko asked. Chen looked at her, then at Kai. Now we listen. Whatever Venus is trying to tell us, I think it's about to become clear. The following days passed in a blur of discovery and revelation. Mariko, Kai, and Chen worked around the clock in the resonance chamber, studying the evolving patterns emanating from Venus. The planet continued to interact with Processor 9, using it as a focal point for communication. Other members of the station's scientific team were gradually brought into the project, their specialized knowledge necessary to interpret the complex data. The initial secrecy gave way to a controlled release of information, carefully managing the potential psychological impact on the station's personnel. 1 week after the processor event, a breakthrough came. The mathematics embedded in Venus's emanations were translated into a rudimentary visual language, abstract representations of concepts rather than discrete words or sentences. Mariko stood with the others in the resonance chamber, watching as the first clear message from Venus took shape on the main display. It was a series of interlocking geometric forms that shifted and evolved, like a 4-dimensional sculpture being viewed from different angles simultaneously. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "But what does it mean?" Kai wondered. Dr. Esther Okafor, the station's linguist who had been brought into the project 3 days earlier, stepped forward. "It's a self-representation," she explained. "Venus is showing us how it perceives itself. Not as a planet in the conventional sense, but as a nexus of temporal and spatial relationships." "A planetary consciousness," Chen murmured. "Just as we suspected." "More than that," Okafor continued. "Based on these patterns, Venus doesn't experience time linearly. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously from its perspective. That explains the temporal anomalies you discovered, Ms. Sanaya. They weren't anomalies at all, just places where Venus's perception of time intersected with our own." Mariko tried to wrap her mind around this concept. "So when I saw cloud formations repeating with perfect precision, you were seeing Venus remembering its own future," Okafor confirmed, "or perhaps more accurately, experiencing multiple time streams at once. Is it the only one?" Kai asked the question that had been on Mariko's mind. "Are there others like it?" The display shifted again, showing what appeared to be a map of the solar system, but with strange connections between the planets, lines of force or relationship that didn't correspond to any astronomical model Mariko recognized. "I believe it's trying to tell us that all planetary bodies have some form of consciousness," Okafor interpreted. "But Venus is different, special somehow." "A guardian," Chen said suddenly. "That's what this symbol represents." He pointed to a recurring pattern in the display. "Venus sees itself as a protector or guardian of something." "Of what?" Mariko asked. The display shifted again, zooming out to show the entire solar system, then the local star cluster, then the galaxy itself. At each level, similar patterns of relationship appeared, connections and networks that suggested a vast, complex system of planetary consciousnesses spanning the cosmos. Of us, Chen realized. Of Earth. Of all life in our solar system. Mariko studied the display with growing wonder. It's been watching us all this time, for billions of years. "And now it's reaching out," Kai added, "using our terraforming technology to establish communication." "But why now?" Mariko wondered. "Why not when we first sent probes to Venus decades ago?" The display changed again, showing a series of images that sent a chill down Mariko's spine. Temporal distortion spreading beyond Venus, affecting Earth's atmosphere, weather patterns changing in ways that defied prediction, subtle shifts in orbital mechanics throughout the solar system. "It's warning us," Okafor breathed. "Time itself is becoming unstable throughout the solar system, and Venus has been working to contain it, to protect us." "That's why it embraced the terraforming project," Chen realized. "Not because it wanted to change, but because our technology could help it strengthen its guardian role." Mariko moved closer to the display. "Can we help? Can we do something?" The answer came as a new pattern forming on the screen, a complex interplay of Venusian atmospheric manipulation and human terraforming technology, a collaboration. "It's showing us how to modify the processes," Chen said, studying the pattern, to create a network that could stabilize these temporal distortions. But this goes far beyond terraforming, Kai pointed out. We'd be directly interacting with whatever fundamental forces are causing these distortions. We'd be participating in cosmic maintenance, Mariko said softly, helping Venus in its role as guardian. Chen looked at each of them in turn. This is beyond anything we expected when we began this project. The implications for human understanding of the universe are profound. So what do we do? Kai asked. Chen took a deep breath. We help, we learn, and we recognize that we're not alone in this solar system. We never were. 3 months later, Mariko stood on the exterior walkway where her journey had begun, looking out at the transformed landscape of Venus. The caramel clouds now pulsed with subtle patterns of light, visible manifestations of the planet's communication with the network of modified processors encircling it. The terraforming project had evolved into something far different from its original concept. Rather than reshaping Venus to suit human needs, humanity was now working in partnership with the planetary consciousness, strengthening its ability to maintain temporal stability throughout the solar system. Kai joined her at the railing. The new processor modifications are complete. Venus seems pleased, if that's the right word. Mariko smiled. I think satisfied might be more accurate. It's been working alone for billions of years. Having help must be a significant change. A good change, though. Kai looked out at the swirling patterns in the atmosphere. The temporal distortions have decreased by 63% throughout the solar system. Earth's weather patterns are stabilizing. And we've barely begun to understand what Venus is teaching us, Mariko added. Chen says the new mathematics alone will revolutionize our understanding of physics. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the clouds. The rest of the station's personnel had gradually adjusted to the new reality, that they were living alongside a vast, ancient intelligence that experienced reality in ways humans were only beginning to comprehend. Do you ever wonder, Kai said after a while, what it was like for Venus all those billions of years? Watching, waiting, protecting? Sometimes, Mariko considered the question. I think it must have been patient, operating on a time scale we can barely imagine, and lonely, Kai suggested, until now. Below them, a new pattern formed in the clouds, a spiral that expanded and contracted in rhythmic pulses. A greeting Mariko had learned to recognize, Venus acknowledging their presence. Not lonely anymore, Mariko said, smiling. None of us are. As if in response, the clouds pulsed with a gentle light that spread across the Venusian sky, embracing the floating research station in its glow. A promise of partnership, of knowledge shared and challenges faced together. Humanity had come to Venus expecting to conquer and transform a dead world. Instead, they had found a teacher, a protector, and perhaps, though the concept stretched the boundaries of human understanding, a friend. Mariko placed her hand against the railing, feeling the subtle vibrations of the station as it rode the Venusian winds. Somewhere far below, at the planet's core, an ancient consciousness continued its vigilant work, no longer alone in its cosmic duty. Welcome to the conversation, Venus, she whispered. We're listening now.